Hey, welcome to the BK Show podcast. This is episode number 9, and today I get to chat with my good friend Troy Remelski. As the title of this podcast says, he is the most interesting 8-figure business owner I know. Today we're going to talk about how he was a knight, a trapeze artist, how he worked on a cruise ship, and a whole bunch more, and we deep dive into his business and my businesses as well. This was a really cool chat. Actually runs up there close to 2 hours, so I hope you take time to enjoy this entire podcast because we talk about a lot of great stuff. Troy's amazing. I'm super glad I had the chance to interview him, so let's just dive right in. Hey, welcome to the show, Troy.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Dude, I much like every other guest on this episode so far, I met you at a mastermind. Masterminds are a great thing. I think we're going to talk about that a little bit later. You might be the king of masterminds. You're in more than most people, but I really want to deep dive into that because I think that's really cool. But yeah, your story is crazy. I don't even know where to begin this. Like I told you yesterday, we chatted for a little bit. The first thing I ever did with you was this exercise called the bus, where we sat across from each other minutes after meeting each other, and I had to tell you 5 things I liked about you. All I recall saying is you had cool glasses. I don't know if I remember telling. And you're jacked. You're a very, very fit man. I remember complimenting your muscles, I think.
It's very weird. I think there was 14, 15 people, maybe even more than that. And we had to sit knee to knee across from each other. So with a bunch of strange men in the room, and you're touching knees, and you're staring at this other guy, and you have to compliment him, and it's the weirdest sort of ice-breaking scenario. And I don't even know if it broke the ice. It almost made things a little bit weirder for me because I'm like, I have a lot of men complimenting me on my physical features because that's all they know about me at the time, and that's very bizarre for me. I
forgot about the part where like I'm a big guy, right? And so I don't fit in most like situations anyway, like airplane seats, not for me. But I did forget about the fact that we were sitting very uncomfortably close to each other. And I had just met you, and nobody gets that close and just stares in each other's eyes and says, I like this about you, when they've never met. I don't, honestly, looking back, I don't remember the purpose of that little exercise, nor do I remember any benefits from it other than like pushing through the awkwardness.
Yeah, it was extremely awkward. And if it had been a larger group of people, I probably would have ducked out and hid during some of those things because they were too early on. I think they were like the first day of the event, and it wasn't like we had ample time to really get to know everybody. So it was just like I couldn't even remember people's names, and I'm trying to tell people everything that I like about them. And so you have no choice but to rely on physical features, and God willing, they have something that you can draw upon and not be completely awkward about it. Because then you're also like knee to knee with the women too, trying to give them compliments. And I'm like, oh my gosh,
not be weird.
Yeah, I'm going to get some weird letter that I've been banned from this group after this. So yeah, it was, but I don't know. It was interesting. It was memorable for sure. And maybe a little premature, but it's sort of served its purpose, and we got through. And I remember, yeah, I just remember the glasses. We talked about each other's glasses.
Well, from awkward moments, I'm glad it turned into something more than that. I've actually had the opportunity to sit down and chat with you quite a few times. And you're a deep guy with a checkered, I don't know if that's the right term, eclectic, colorful. There you go. You have definitely one of the strangest paths I've ever seen, but like in a great way. I don't even know where to begin. So I hadn't planned on bringing this up until you posted a memory on Facebook the other day that you were a medieval knight. Like, let's start there. How far back can we go in Troy's story before we get to,
oh my gosh.
Like, folks, this guy has an 8-figure business right now. But boy, has he done some interesting things. And I want to talk through all those interesting things and figure out how the heck you got to an 8-figure online business.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, going way back, that's always a fun picture. It's a fun picture for everybody, I think, because with the exception of 2 years of my life, I've had short hair. And so that came at a time where I was just like, forget it, I'll let my hair grow. And then I ended up becoming a knight at Medieval Times, and they said, keep the long hair. And so everybody gets a kick out of the Medieval Times pictures in Troy with long hair. It looks really, it's just very unusual. But how that came to be was really, my first job out of college was corporate entertainment. So it was, suit and tie, or at least shirt and tie, and sitting at desk and long hours. And I thought I wanted to go into corporate entertainment industry stuff. And come to find out, I absolutely hated it. Absolutely hated it.
What is corporate entertainment? Like
Just
you're
like
a jester for the boss, or
no, like working like the corporate side of the entertainment industry. And so it's everything from like I worked specifically in the literary management department, so it was a lot of reading screenplays and like reading treatments and should we attempt to make this, and fire it up the ladder, do a meeting about it, like what characters would be good for this, budget breakdowns, stuff like that. And I was entry level. I was very, I was one step up from the mailroom at that point, but I was like, this is horrible. Like, and not only that, it wasn't that my job was horrible. It was that every step up that ladder, I was like, that's even worse. Like, I don't want to go there. And then there was a strike of the Writers Guild. And so they laid off a ton of people, me being one of them. And I was like, great, like I will get out of here. But at the same time, I was like, what do I do now? Like I went through college, I got a degree in film, and I thought I was going to go into the corporate side of the entertainment industry. And I was like, what do I do now? And so it was just one of those things where Medieval Times happened to be hiring and I needed a job. And and at the time I had long hair because I was, hating my existence in the corporate world. And that was all I could do, was continue to grow my hair and rebel. And so drawing upon my background as a gymnast, they hired me pretty quickly and trained me up as a knight. And I went from like, I'd probably ridden once or twice as far as horses on trails and stuff like that. And then they taught me how to ride, how to joust, how to jump off a running horse, swing a sword, fight with choreography, and a bunch of other like really cool things. And as long as I was learning stuff, it was a ton of fun. It was hot. It was hot in the outfits and stuff like that. But it was, it was unusual and it was a blast. And it led to other things. It didn't pay very well, but it was definitely a blast, and it was something different. And I didn't have to wear a tie.
Is that a traveling thing, or is that like stationary?
Oh, yeah. Medieval Times, they're like, they just have arenas. It's a choreographed show in a specific location. So yeah, this is in Orange County, California, and they have 6 or 7 different locations around the US, stuff like that. And then like sometimes guys will go to different castles around the US to do the shows there, but for the most part,
there's one that comes to the Twin Cities, and I think it's all volunteers, and they sell like trinkets and weird.
Oh, you're talking about like Renaissance fair stuff.
Yeah. That's where my head goes, right? That's the only time I've ever seen a guy on a horse, jousting with another man.
No, if like, for giving Medieval Times the free plug, if you look up Medieval Times, like they actually have like physical locations where they build a castle, and you go, and it's a whole dinner theater in the round type of thing.
I'm Googling this right now. I want to see what you're talking about. I went to the Renaissance fair in the Twin Cities, and like I said, it was clearly a lot of volunteers who are way into this. Like, they don't break character for anything. They're selling little handmade crafts they made. They're doing like little 4-minute skits and then holding their hand out and a hat out trying to get some money. And so that's my only experience with this. But medieval, this is like a dinner theater.
Yeah.
Kind of want to use that picture of you as like the cover for this rather than a nice smiley picture of you.
That'd be funny. And so, yeah, there's a fair amount of guys that come out of Medieval Times and then end up doing some traveling Ren Fair stuff. Like I'm sure there's multiple Ren Fairs. I don't know much about that circuit, but I do know that several guys, after they were done with Medieval Times, would then sort of do Ren Fair stuff on the side or on the weekends and stuff like that.
Does the crowd go as wild as this website makes it look?
Sometimes, depends if you're doing a good job or not. But yeah, it could be, and it's fun. Everything's choreographed. Every now and then, things go wrong, or horses are live animals, and sometimes they just do things they want to do and not so much what you want to do. Like I remember one time, I don't know, my horse was having a bad day or something like that, and so he freaked out at the sound of the joust. And so riding down the rail jousting, and right at the time where we hit lances against shields, it makes that loud like clash sound, and the horse just like posted up and stopped. And you're not holding on to too much because like I think I was supposed to fall on that run anyway, and so I had my feet out of the stirrups, and I'm just kind of hugging the horse with my legs a little bit, and I was going to jump off anyways. And so, but the horse posts up and stops, and you're not really holding on to anything. So all of a sudden I'm just rocketing over the head of the horse as he stops. just land like face first in the sand in front of them. You're like, oh, man, you got to get up and fight.
Well, I can dig it, man. When I was a little kid, my brother and I were so into WWF. I'm a big dude. He's bigger than me and way more athletic. I'm kind of roly-poly. And so we had this vision of being tag team partners, and some like long-lost uncle of ours knew Mr. Perfect, who's from the Twin Cities as well. And when we went to his wedding, he's like, you guys are going to grow up to be the greatest tag team ever. And so I'm into this. Like, let's choreograph it. Let's fake it. That sounds like fun. Like, what made you want to stop doing that? That's my question. It looks like a blast, at least on their website.
It was a blast, but it was a fair hike from where I was actually living, and it wasn't really a career, and it didn't pay well. I'm trying to remember. I want to say I was making like $9 an hour.
What?
Yeah. I mean, this is like 20 years ago.
Sure.
And they had this thing where they wanted you there like 40 hours a week. And I was like, I can't be here 40 hours a week for nine. Like traditionally, like other live shows, they'll pay you by the show, or they'll pay you by like the day, and you just roll in. You do like some kind of blocking or some kind of like small rehearsal or walkthrough of whatever that day is going to be. Then you do the show. Then you go home. And this was like you had to show up. They wanted you to train. They wanted you to like paint or drywall or do whatever other projects around the castle that they had and stuff like that. It was just like, no, this is.
But you were like the star of the show, right? Like you didn't have your nose up in the air like, I'm the jouster. You know what I mean? Like, I'm the knight. I'm not going to do any drywall projects.
They wanted all the knights doing it. So all the knights and all the squires are in the back, like cutting lances, painting lances, like, doing maintenance on all the stuff. And it was a very, I don't know. It was just unusual to run a show in that fashion, and for the amount of money that they were paying, and it wasn't a super safe show, and it was safer than it had been, and it has gotten a lot safer since then. And so there was a high rate of injury amongst guys, and it's like this for $9 an hour, you can find something better to do. It's something that's probably closer to home and a little bit more flexible. And so once the novelty sort of wore off, it was like, okay, I think it's time for me to sort of get going and find something new to do.
Was it all clicky? Like, were the squires mad that you walked in and you were a knight right out of the gates? And
wow, it's like you read. Did you read that? So it was so funny. Me and this other guy. It was like me and two guys we were hired. Yeah, me and two guys. Three of us total were hired for the first time ever, specifically to be knights. Like traditionally, you got hired in as a squire, and then you squired for an undisclosed period of time, and eventually you picked up enough that they would let you be a knight. And this was like, and so me and these other two guys, we rolled in not knowing anything about this is how this system works. We just like answered a cattle call audition from the paper and walked in, and right out of the gate, they're training us to be a knight. So I think from day one to when I did my first show was something like a month. And some of these squares, and I didn't know it at the time, until you're like, why are these guys so pissed at me? But it was like some of them had been there years trying to like work their way up to knight. And, here I was just oh, great. I'm going to be a knight. Hey, squire, like do that. And so I didn't know the protocol, and I felt a little bad about that. But in the end of the day, everybody was really nice and really cool about it. And yeah, it worked out all right.
So you mentioned, a gymnast pass, right? So that was my actual first note. So this sounds like it was early on, in your 20s, right, that you did this medieval knight stuff. And you said you had a gymnast pass. And I knew about your gymnast, I guess, future after that, right? I knew a little bit about where that went. Can you talk me through like what it meant, like when you were a gymnast? Like how did that go? And then my next note is like, weren't you a trapeze artist?
Yeah, my future career is trapeze after being a knight. So yes, as part of my whole colorful past. So I grew up doing gymnastics. I think I started gymnastics when I was just about 5 years old, and it was, I'd seen Star Wars and Luke Skywalker flipping around, and I was like, that is great. And I was, jumping all over stuff. And so my parents put me in gymnastics, and lo and behold, I did okay with it and kind of stumbled through and like won a few state titles along the way, some regional awards too, and went to nationals and what else? I ended up going out to the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs and training there for a little bit one time. And I had a lot of fun with it, but I was pretty banged up by the time I was in high school. And so it was like, my coaches were like, hey, we can make video submissions and we can probably get you a scholarship somewhere. And I'm like, I can't even fathom the idea of doing this for 4 more years. Like everything hurts. like I like the notion of getting a free ride through college, but I couldn't. Like gymnastics for men was being whittled down at so many schools that the selection was slim. And it was like, I want to say, they're like, well, you could go to Iowa and be a broadcast journalism major. And I'm like, that doesn't speak to me. That wasn't what I wanted to do. I had my eyes on California and going to film school. And so there was nowhere that I could go and do gymnastics that would get me anywhere close to, to what I thought my career was going to be. And so I was like, well, is gymnastics going to pay the bills, or do I have to just go to college to go to college? And, I made the judgment call to drop gymnastics, not knowing that I was going to spend so much time later on in my life doing, physical stuff.
What's the connection between being a gymnast and film school? Where did that passion come from?
I just always loved movies. Loved movies. Like I watched so many movies through junior high and high school, and like my parents had a cable to scrambler, and so I would record countless movies like overnight and stuff like that, and then just watch movie after movie after movie after movie and watch them again. And like that was what I spent every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday throughout high school. I was just like going to movies or like going theater hopping and seeing 2-3 movies in the same day. And so like movies were my thing and what I thought I was going to spend my life doing. And if there's ever any trivia about movies from the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, I'm probably a safe bet to have on your team. I'll probably do pretty well. So that was what I thought I was going to do.
Did you want to write movies or like act in the movies, or what did you want to do regarding?
No, I thought I was going to end up behind the camera, probably directing or doing some kind of cinematography or something like that. And it was just, and like I have been on my fair share of sets, and I have done a little bit of acting, a little bit of stunts, and a little bit of behind the camera work. And just, man, it's long days, and it's a slow process to assemble a film. And it just turns out that it wasn't what I wanted. My priorities shifted after I got there, which is fine. It's God bless the broken road. Like I really love where I'm at now and everything that I'm doing. And like if I had gone down a different path, I might not have ended up here. And so I still love movies. Just I don't get to watch them quite as frequently, but
it all seems to fall into place, right?
Yeah. And so went out to California because USC Film School was supposedly number one. It was, go to Southern California or go to New York and take a crack at it. And it worked. I mean, it was what it was, and I had a good time. And it just the entertainment industry just turned out to not fully be for me. And so I spent the next sort of couple of years fumbling around. We'll get around to that trapeze school bit in a little bit.
I'm just trying to connect the dots, right? So you're a high school gymnast who sounds pretty amazing. You're kind of rubbing off state championships and nationals. No big deal for this guy. And then he goes to film school. Then he gets hired in the corporate entertainment side of it, right? It sounds like you were the guy who movies would get sent to you first, and if you got a no from you, it wouldn't even move up the chain. Is what it sounds like. Yeah. And then you're a medieval knight, and $9 an hour is just not enough for Troy's lifestyle. What happens next?
What happens next is one of the knight's dads was a mortgage broker.
Okay,
and so I would go into the mortgage brokering office for a while in the morning because I was like, gotta make some real money. And then I would, then go over and be knighting in the afternoons and evenings.
Knighting.
I'd be moonlighting as a knight. And then I was like, hey, there's not that much to this whole mortgage brokering thing. I could probably do this. And so I got my broker's license and I set up shop as a mortgage broker and kind of worked that angle for a little bit, but I still missed it. And so even though I had dropped knighting, I got this call from one of the knights about a year after I was done at Medieval Times. I'm like, hey, they're opening this new show and they're looking for a guy who can bounce trampoline, is good with a sword, can crack a whip, and can do a partner act with a girl. And I was like, oddly, I have all of those skills. And so I walked in and it was like, I didn't even have to audition. They had me do like a pull-up, I think. They had me do a pull-up and And just off of like strength of people's word, they hired me into that show, and I ended up playing the Green Pirate in this Pirates Dinner Adventure live action show. I don't know, for like 7 years, and it's where I ended up meeting my wife.
7 years? Is this on film somewhere? Can I watch this?
I'm sure I can get some of it to you.
I would love to.
I'm sure there's fragments of this show, but like kind of a similar thing, and it was actually down the street from Medieval Times. It was a whole theater of the round where there's 6 pirates, and you each have a different color. And so my love interest in the show is a gypsy girl, and numerous. I mean, it was like a revolving door of cast, and so like numerous cast. You had to work with multiple partners throughout the thing, but one of the girls who ended up training in is the woman that later on went on to be my wife. So my onstage love interest became my real life love interest.
Nice.
And then we took our partner act and we expanded it, and that was an act that we eventually sort of sold, and we took on the road and we traveled around performing on cruise ships for a while and stuff like that.
What?
And yeah.
So what happened to the mortgage company, right? You go from $9 an hour being a knight. I'm assuming they paid you a little more to jump on a trampoline and swing a sword. Is how you described it?
Little bit, yeah. So yeah, the mortgage business grew and did pretty well for a while, and then there was the big mortgage crisis of 2008, and kind of everything came crashing down. Which was, you know what? I mean, just for the person who I am, and I could see what everybody was doing. It was like the writing was on the wall for a long time, and there was. Like people would come to me for a refinance on their house, and I was like, you shouldn't do this. Like there's, you're kind of maxing out, and this loan isn't in your favor. And he's like, and people would be like, I need the money. And they're like, you're the only guy that tells me that. Everybody else just wants to take my money. So I want you to do the mortgage, because at least you're being upfront and telling me that this is going to come crashing down on me one day. And so like, I was actually, when the subprime sort of crisis hit and mortgage and real estate just started to crumble, it started to implode. I was actually grateful to get out of that business, because I didn't have a good enough reason to get out of it. And like as an owner operator, you can't really sell off the shop. You just have to go with it, is basically how it goes. They want you to go with it. Otherwise it just like the deals don't work out. And so there wasn't really an out for me until, there was no choice but to close up shop. Right? Yeah. I mean, it was a choice, and I just made it early on in the scenario. I didn't try and fight against the tide that was happening. And so then it was like, well, what am I doing now? I guess I'll just continue to moonlight as a knight and kind of cruise on with my life at that point. So, and then that takes you to, I was busy being a knight, training with my, not at that time wife, but she was my partner. And we were doing hand balancing and acro out at Old Muscle Beach in Venice, or Santa Monica. Yeah, if you search for stuff, if you're not familiar with that, if you look up Old Muscle Beach or Santa Monica Beach and stuff like that, hand balancing, acrobatics, every Sunday there's a group of people that get out there, and then there's crowds of people that'll come by and take pictures and stuff like that. But it's a great place to train. It's a great sort of little circus community and stuff like that. And so I end up working with this one girl there who's a really talented hand balancer, and she's teaching me some stuff. And her husband, just get to talking with him, and he's like, so who are you? Like, what do you do? Because my wife and I, we were building up a pretty good skill set at that point. We were getting ready to sell an act. And he's like, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, nothing. Like, I'm just kind of like playing a pirate on the side. And he's like, well, what's your background? And I was like, well, I had this mortgage company. And he's like, whoa, slow down here. He's like, so you have a business background and an acrobatic background, which I didn't realize those two skill sets were, could provide a combination of value in any way. And I said, yeah. And he's like, I need a general manager for my flying trapeze school. And I was like, that's kind of strange. I was like, where is it? And he's like, it's right there. And it's literally on the Santa Monica Pier. And I was like, all right, well, and I wasn't taking him real seriously. And then, lo and behold, he brought me up there. And about a week later, I'm the general manager of a flying trapeze school, and got to figure out how flying trapeze works and learn to catch flying trapeze, at least enough to do some classes and stuff like that. And just worked on, I was more concerned with growing their business a little bit, but yeah. So what had happened sort of throughout that whole thing is after the mortgage business sort of imploded, I had a partnership that went bad, and my bank accounts got emptied out, and I ended up taking that job and sort of living at the Santa Monica Pier for lack of any other options until I could kind of scrap together some money and some resources. So I spent a few nights actually in a shed on the Santa Monica Pier, just because I had the keys, and it was kind of cold, but that was
Yikes.
that was where I called home for a few days.
I'm still stuck on the trapeze part. My brain immediately goes to like, I mean, there was a circus that would come to my tiny little town when I was a kid, and to see those people, holding a bar in the back of their knees and swinging around and catching people, it fascinated me as a little kid, right? I'm not very athletic, right? And so to see that, I'm like, how does any human being do that? And it sounds like you were just like, yeah, sure, I could probably swing on a bar and grab some people in midair.
They were like, I felt a little bad for them. I was not the best fit for that because it was very much like they had a very sort of family environment. Like, this is what we do, the trapeze school and blah, blah. And for me, it was much more of a job. And I felt bad because they really deserved somebody who was all in on that place. And it just wasn't me. And they're like, how are you not like absolutely in love with all this? And I'm like, I've been swinging on things, flying and falling down my entire life at this point. Like, and not that it isn't cool. It's just, it doesn't have the same rush and novelty that it does for you guys. Like, this is something like relatively new, and like, this is your world. And I was like, this has been my world for a very long time. And so it was not a great fit. I still think I did a pretty good job there, and like got them running in the right direction. And then when it was time to go, my wife and I sold our act, and we kind of like, gave them notice and took off and decided to travel the world on cruise ships performing.
Help me understand what sold your act means, right? Because you're talking about sleeping in a shed on the pier, which sounds pretty awful. And I know a little more about that story we don't have to talk about, but like, that sounds pretty awful, right? Like, you were at a rock bottom. I think everybody can look back at somewhere in their life where they've hit a pit they don't want to look back on, but it was a good thing, right? It probably rocketed you in the right direction of where you are now, and I know you're super happy now. But like, what does selling your act look like, right? Like, so what act do you and your wife have, and what does it mean to sell your act?
Sure. So selling our act, we were aerial acrobatics. So we did aerial silks. We had a lyra routine, which is a big metal hoop. But anyways, and it hangs in the air. Like the silks is what we did the most of, and basically we would wrap up in this fabric, and a winch would take us up in the air to music, and everybody's timed out. And we swing around and do various skills, and she hangs off my neck and spins around. We had some really cool stuff in there, and we had a couple of wonderful teachers that kind of gave us sort of behind the curtain sort of look at how you do so much of this. And it was they were the original Green Pirate and Gypsy that I had hired in under. And even though they weren't at the company anymore, it sort of kept in touch. And they had taught me some simple things. And then when it came time to more advanced stuff, they really sort of like opened the doors for us. And they really, really were kind and taught us a lot of things. And so they helped us put together a couple of acts. And then I can't remember.
So when you say acts, so you're saying like, look, I come from a background where I was in a band, right? And so we would have, 9-song set or something like that, right? And places would pay us back then like $200 to come play your 9-song. Is that the same sort of thing? You have almost like this hour-long session, and then you're presenting that to cruise ships, and I would imagine a bunch of other places, right? Saying, we'll come on and do it for this price.
Yeah, you end up with a video of all your performances and stuff like that, and then you just submit those out as a demo. And you say, and they'll say yay or nay, or there's cruise ship agents, like talent agents that will book you on different cruise lines. And you can, depending on your clout, you can say yay or nay, depending on the amount of performing they want you to do over the course of a cruise. And, depending on the pay and stuff like that, you can also, you also get to then sort of select your routes. If there's multiple options available to you, you can kind of pick and choose where the ship you want to be on based on where you want to travel to. And it actually turns out to be a pretty cool lifestyle. Like, because as a performer on a cruise ship, especially as a specialty performer on a cruise ship, they don't really know what to do with you. A lot of the crew has like other obligations, but as a specialty performer, like my wife and I, our only responsibilities were to make sure our training was good, which was easy to do. We did it all the time anyway, but it was on us. We didn't have set hours where we had to train. And then we had to, we had to show up for our performances, and that was it. And so
talk me through this side, because from your side, it sounds amazing, right? Especially when you're young and you just want to travel the world and do cool shit. But you often hear comedians who will be like, now he's washed up and he's doing cruise ships. You know what I mean? Like, so from this angle, it sounds awesome, right? Was the pay good? Obviously, you got to go to a bunch of different locations around the world. On the cruise ship, I wouldn't step foot on a cruise ship, even more so now with coronavirus. But it sounds cool. Like in my mid-20s, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, for sure. And like, the pay was pretty decent, especially when you compare it to like, if you're doing shows like the Pirates Dinner Adventure Show. That show ran 7 days a week, and I think I would do it depending on my schedule. I'd probably do it 3 to 5 days a week. And they always wanted more, but yeah, 3 to 5 days a week. And it's just always the same. You're always in the same place. And so that kind of like, it gets old after a while. It just becomes a job. And it's still fun. Like as far as jobs go, it's a fun job, but you're still just there. And so like touring around on a cruise ship, you get to see so many places, you get to meet a lot of people. And it's a great way to the pay for what we were doing was okay, was good. And your room and board is covered. You have no responsibilities. It's pretty cool, I gotta say.
Food covered and all that stuff too?
Yeah, you don't have to pay for anything.
Nice.
Unless you want to take a trip to the bar or something like that. But yeah, room and board covered, and then you get to go to all the countries and stuff like that. And we did 2 week cruises, so each cruise would last 2 weeks. And so we would do, they would call them bumpers, but they were like the opening and closing numbers. There would be a show at like the welcome aboard show, and then like the farewell show. Those are called we called them bumpers. They were the opening and closing numbers. And then there were 2 other shows that we had to perform in. And I think our longest set was like 5 minutes. And so,
how much would you get paid for these 2 week stints where you're doing 20 minutes of work and, staying fit, obviously?
I want to say it was like $1,400 a week each. So we were making $2,800 as a couple a week.
Maybe this sounds crazy, but like if you didn't have kids, would you still be doing it and running your 8-figure Amazon business on the side? It seems like you know what I mean? It seems like you get to stay fit, you get to travel the world, you get paid well to not work very often, right? You could still run your business. I'm assuming the internet's decent on a cruise ship.
The internet at the time was not decent on a cruise ship, but I've heard it is a lot better now. People talk about now you can stream like Netflix and stuff from a cruise ship, and that was not the case. You would have a tough time watching like a YouTube video way back then. But it was a great thing. It was hard to, because I was considerably older. I think I was 33, 34 at the 33. I was probably 33. So explaining that to other people, and I'd worked a mortgage business. I'd been jousted and knocked down countless times and stuff like that. And I'd had responsibilities and blah, blah, blah. And so suddenly it's like you're on vacation. I was like, wait a minute, let me get this straight. So and all those shows would line up. And so we would work 4 days in a row and have 10 days off essentially. And of those 4 days, we would work, 10 minutes each day. You had to sit around, but you were actually physically active for a total of 10 minutes. So it's a great way to travel, see the world, and you're just collecting, you're not spending money on anything unless you go to port and buy stuff. And so you're just saving, which was awesome. And I don't know if I'd still be doing it. The weird thing about traveling around on a cruise ship is it's almost like summer camp. You go there and it's kind of you see these people, and relationships aren't very deep most of the time. And I was lucky enough to be there with my wife, but during the course of your contract, people come and people go as their contracts are timed differently. And so it's a revolving door of people. And then, you look back to your friends that are on land and they've got a house, and hey, look, they've got a kid. And so it seems like time is slowly passing you by. And so at some point you have to go all right, this has been great. But if you want to get off that sort of treadmill and, plant a flag and claim your life somewhere, then you got to hop off at some point and give it a go on land. And it was great. It was fantastic for what it was, and fantastic chapter of my life. And And I was happy when we were done too and working on something else.
So where is that transition point, right? Where does the FOMO kick in? You see all your friends with kids, and it sounds great, doesn't it, on the outside until you have kids? Yeah, but like, when did it kick in, and you were like, I need to do something else, right?
I think I just always had this nagging feeling. So I was 33, and I think the next oldest cast member to me was 27, and so I'm like, and I always kind of had this like cutoff date in my mind mentally that if I'm 35 and I'm not killing it in this, then like I really got to try and make it some other way. And like it was a great chapter in my life, but you know, that clock was kind of ticking in the back of my mind, and I was like, I got to figure out how I'm going to do something else. And at the time, you know, my 20s and 30s were kind of eaten up by running businesses that didn't go spectacularly and performing, which wasn't going spectacularly. And so I was like, well, I got to do something else. And I'm kind of unemployable at that point. So I was like, well, I guess I'll start another business. And it's like, well, what can I run from a ship? And that turned out to be like, oh, I think I can figure out how to run a business online. Technology was getting there. But at the time we were paying for internet. I think it was like 11 or 12 cents a minute on the ship.
What?
Yeah. So you got to be, and it sucks. Like the satellite
that seems
connection.
Like so long ago that we had crappy internet. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It just seems like it's part of our life now.
I know. We're so entrenched. I don't know what to do. And I think, and they didn't sell any sort of like unlimited internet packages at the time. So it was like you could only buy it in chunks of like 100 minutes. And that was the cheapest you could get it. If you bought it in smaller chunks, the time would get more expensive, up to like 35, 40 cents a minute.
What are
something
these like
that.
AOL discs or something like that?
I mean, no, they had some kind of a satellite connection.
Sure.
No, the ship did have Wi-Fi. That's right. Yeah, it was Wi-Fi, but it was also then for me, it was a lot of strategy. So yeah, I started a business where, and this is like, I had to find a PDF, like, you know, how to sell stuff online. I found a PDF instruction booklet on how to do that, and like real quick threw together some stuff, and then started selling from when I was on the cruise ship. I didn't even see anything that I was selling for like a year and a half or something.
But this is like 8 years ago, 7, 8 years ago.
Yeah.
So what were you selling? What platform, and what did the PDF tell you to do 8 years ago to start selling stuff online?
It was it was like how to sell dietary supplements. And so it was like they had a list of like contract manufacturing of dietary supplements. And so I ended up just calling around to all these places and just asking a bunch of questions until you sort of kind of know what you're talking about. And then you can sound a little more professional with the next place you call, and a little more professional with the next place you call, until eventually they sort of take you seriously because they think you know what you're talking about. And that was what I did. And we had labels designed, used some, private label in-house formula that they had. I bought a few hundred units of some stuff and sent it off to Amazon. And first 2 products did nothing. Third one did a little tiny trickle of sale. Fourth one did a little bit more. And I was like, all right, there's enough here. And I didn't need the money. I was still stuck in my day job on a cruise ship and trying to make that work. And it was a interesting way to sort of get started. Like, you don't know what you don't know. I did know that I wanted something. In the time I had to think about it, I wanted to do something that was made in the USA, because long distance calls from a ship were over $1 a minute or something like that. And I didn't want to deal with any sort of language issues because everything cost money. And it was really, internet connection was unstable half the time off the coast of South America and, Antarctica and stuff like that. So it was like, all right, well, let's try and keep it as simple as possible. We'll do something in the USA. And so that was where, and it was small and it was light. It was easily sort of adaptable to my label. And so dietary supplements was kind of checked all the boxes for me.
What did it look like back then? Like, this is, I think, before I started, if you're going back that far. Like, I started in 2015 drop shipping. And so was this the beginning of FBA? Was that a thing when you sent these in?
Yeah, 2013. It was early 2013. It was pretty early on in FBA. And it was like, we didn't know what we didn't know back then. Yeah. Everything was sort of new. We were sort of stumbling through it. But it was like, I do remember that, I met some people who were selling some stuff on Amazon, and I was like, tell me sort of the ins and outs of how this works. They're like, oh, you got to get reviews. And I was like, all right, how do I get reviews? And they're like, well, we just review it for each other. And so I was like, all right, sounds great. And so at the time, it wasn't even like a verified buyer review. You like everybody just sort of like, hey, what's your product URL? And you gave it to them, and then they went in there and they didn't even buy it. They just wrote you up a review, and so you get a few people to write you some reviews with different accounts and stuff like that, and you're off and running.
That was still around for like when I did my first FBA product. I had some gel pens in 2016. That was the same thing. Every person I ran into, I'm like, hey, do you have an Amazon app on your phone? And they're like, yep. Mm-hmm. And then we'd pull up my pens, and I'd write a review for them and hand them their phone back. And I was like, wow, this is how the internet works. Like, it just blew my mind. I'm sure it was even more Wild West back then.
Yeah, well, for everybody who's listening now, and like Amazon does not work that way anymore.
No,
and sadly, those days are gone. But for me, it was like just dipping my toe in the water at a time when I was lucky, and things did work like that. And even with it working like that, the first 2 products failed, and the second one only did a little bit, and it was just enough to the third one only did a little bit, so it was just enough to sort of like keep me going and help me learn and stuff like that, and it taught me a certain amount of organization, because if you're going to be paying for the internet, like you can't be fumbling around. You had to make a list of everything you wanted to get done, and you had to be able to log in and then try and bang your way through it. And it was really hard at the time to get trained. The only way to get training was like whenever we got off the ship, I'd take my laptop into like a coffee shop and hope the Wi-Fi was good enough to be able to download some stuff. And like my wife would give me dirty looks sometimes, because I would like these coffee shops in like Buenos Aires and wherever else we were, they were never like changing the standard router information on their router. So you could go to like the router IP address and just log into the router and block everybody off for a few minutes so you could have the full bandwidth. And you could download whatever you needed to download and give it back to everybody. But like you just see everybody like all at once. I'd be like, all right, like reset the router or like change the password on it or something, or change the SSID. And all of a sudden you just see everybody like around the coffee shop be like, what? The Wi-Fi? No, it's not working. Like, what's going on? And like real quickly, I'm like, oh, download it.
So who were you learning from back then, right? Like who sold you the PDF? Who were the big names back at that time that you were, trying to learn how to do this from?
It wasn't even like, nobody even sold me the PDF. I just found it like on some site, or I might have even just downloaded it from Google. I can't even remember. Big names at the time. This is pre-ASM. ASM, before ASM was ASM, they were AMM, which is Amazon Money Machine, which focused on a bunch of things. It was like wholesaling, dropshipping, private labeling. And so it wasn't the amazing.com that it is today. They had a whole different sort of business model there first time out there. But through there, I was able to meet a couple of people, and I want to say there was a couple of forum boards that I was also hitting up at the time, like and it was just to get information. But I think it was like Black Hat World. Wasn't doing any Black Hat stuff, but just to get information on how to improve sales
Warrior
and stuff.
Forum was big back then.
Warrior Forum was big back then. That's right. Yeah. So, but same thing where like I could only cruise through those when we were in port somewhere. I couldn't spend my time online, just reading forum boards mindlessly. Yeah.
So you're still on the ship. You've got 1 out of 3 ain't bad, right? Then what, right? Like how do you make the transition off the ship? How do you convince your wife that this might be a good idea?
We were at a point. We were at kind of like the end of the contract, anyways, and the contract that we had been offered at the time, I want to say, it would have kept us on the same ship doing the same route for like another 6 months or something like that. And we're like, ugh, no, we're done. Like we needed a break. And so I think we were going to be offered something in the next like 3 months after that. And so we're like, all right, well, we'll hop off the ship. We'll go see some family and do a few things. And if we decide to take on another contract, we will. But I was at a point, I want to say I was making $10,000 a month gross. I want to say, yeah. So sales were $10,000 a month, $10,000, $12,000 a month. And I was like, okay, so I can, between our savings and if I need to, I can take $1,000 or $2,000 out a month probably.
So is this business the same one you're running now?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. All right. I didn't make the connection there that you've been around that long.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was kind of how that whole thing started, and got off the ship, and we had our savings, and lived off of our savings and kept pouring cash back into it for a little bit. And we were, what was this? Yeah, we just decided that we were going to stick around for a little bit. The contract came and got offered, and we're like, no, we're going to keep going. We're just going to keep staying on land. My wife had a job at the time. She was playing Peter Pan in Disneyland Stunt Show, so she was off playing Peter Pan a few nights a week, and I was just at home grinding it out. And I had thought a little bit about going back to performing, but I was like, no, I really want to see where this goes. I really think I'm onto something. And so we just kept building and building and snowballing. And then decided it was time to start a family. And starting a family meant kind of the end of performing, because it meant, my wife was probably going to be a full-time mom, and it meant I wanted to be home for nights and weekends. I wanted to be home as much as possible and help raise my kids. And,
yeah.
I mean, they are my kids. I didn't want to hand them off.
It's super easy, and you tend to hear it on podcasts. People kind of breeze through the growth part of it. As far as like you just said, I went like $10,000-$12,000 a month gross, and now you're an 8-figure company, right? It's easy to like breeze through there, but there's a whole lot of stuff that needs to be figured out along the way.
Oh my gosh!
Let alone you're in a niche on Amazon that's dirty, like it's nasty, right? And so how did you start scaling, right? Just obviously one product at a time, right? Just continue launching another product and manufacturing reviews, I would assume, the old fashioned way, and then how did you avoid all the nastiness that's on Amazon? Because I'm sure you have some stories. I have some stories. I've definitely heard a lot of things as far as competitors buying hundreds of your supplement and then leaving hundreds of bad reviews and returning them all, so your listing gets shut down. And
yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, I don't even know where to start with all that. I think one of the initial hiccups is the day we got off the ship. The Amazon lost all of my inventory on that one product. That was sold well. So it was like, I was like, all right, this is okay. Like I'm making a fair amount of money. And then all of a sudden, poof, it's gone. It took them like 2 weeks to find it, but it was like a very long 2 weeks in my life. We were like, we're not making any money all of a sudden. And this was kind of what I hinged my entire life on. And so you do that kind of battle. I think we got shut down a few months later for copyright infringement by Oprah's lawyers. We used some stuff that apparently, oh man. And so like literally begging to get my listings back and literally begging for them to release everything from Harpo Productions is like a horrible, horrible position to be in.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, what have we done? And so like all these little lessons sort of build up along the way. Yeah. Don't piss off Oprah. That's a bad thing. And like, it was completely like, we thought we were doing it right. We thought we were using something that we could use. I was told I could use it. And it turns out that was not good information. And then just dodging, like people like dropping 1-star review after 1-star review after 1-star review on you, and like, man, competitor. Or you used to be able to use the coupon code and sell stuff for like 99 cents, and then it would still count as a verified review. But what people would do was they would buy up all your inventory for 99 cents, and then they'd just list the product against you. They'd put it back up, and then suddenly you've just given your competitor a ton of inventory, and they weren't even kind enough to leave you a review in the process. They just bought all your inventory.
I remember that on Review Kick. I put a few up there. I'd make like 50 available, and then I'd get through 50 and I'd see about 22 reviews, and I'm like, well, this kind of sucked. And then all of a sudden I would see a bunch of people writing my listing, and I'm like, is that it? Like, should I be taking advantage of all these deals and then just shipping it right back into Amazon at full price?
Yeah, it was like, oh, you could have a dirty little side business going there if you really wanted to. But, so it's like you buy inventory once, you sell it to your competitor for 99 cents, and then you buy it back from them to get it back.
Right.
So it's like you paid over double for your inventory. And you're like, oh, this isn't a really good deal. We got to find a better way.
I don't see the horror on your face, right? I've heard some really nasty stories from your industry specifically. Did you just get in early enough that you built enough of a barrier that the evil powers that be couldn't come after you and shut you down, or leave hundreds and hundreds of bad reviews, get your listing shut down, or you didn't run into, there's a million stories of why selling on Amazon sucks, right? I personally haven't experienced very many of them, but you didn't run into many of that either, other than that 2 weeks where they lost your inventory?
No, I've had listings shut down. Like I was on, like we had to write like a plan of action to get reinstated for a product. And this is early. Like I was like, who's written a plan of action? And the answer was nobody at the time. And so, we had products taken down. We were kind of in that first sort of wave of that, and sort of figuring that out was extremely problematic. And took like 3 weeks to figure out how to write a good enough plan of action to get any product sort of reinstated. As far as competitors go, like I think I've been on the lighter side of things. I run like a very sort of, we're very sort of straight laced. And I don't know, like there's guys, when you saw guys like rocketing to the top and doing every sort of dirty tactic in the book to get there, I think that was when you were sort of inviting warfare to ourselves. And we've always had a much more like, let's do good marketing. Let's put out a good product. Let's build a good, solid business sort of approach to everything. And I think that's kind of kept us away from a lot of the horrible tactics that are out there. But we did have several competitors at once like blast you with 1-star reviews, try and take you off the top. And so the answer was, half the time you were able to get some of those removed, and then the other half of the time you were just like, all right, well, let's see what we can do to get more reviews on top of that. Or, there were some voting services you could use at the time before that was able to like trip any red flags, and at least then you could move them off of page one. And so if you were getting hundreds or thousands of reviews, not like all at once, but if you had them and you could just move those negative reviews away from page one, then they were kind of buried and they weren't necessarily problematic. And the Amazon algorithm has always been sort of, aware that 1-star reviews, like that many, probably aren't honest reviews, and somehow they aren't weighted as such. And so, as long as you could move them out of public vision, like they're not counted against you as hard.
The weighted thing is weird. I have a competitor who, I look at anytime they fall from 4.5 to 4 stars, my sales go up. And it's really only me and her in this market. And somehow her comparison to like 5 stars to 1 star, she has a ton of 1 stars. Mm-hmm. But it never falls down to 4. Even when like the weight, like if you do the averaging, she should be at like 3.5. But somehow those 1 stars don't count on her. And like I've never done the they're not from me, right? But it is weird how they weight different stars differently, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I feel like Amazon gets a baseline for a product really early on over a period of time and says, okay, it's about this. And if it fluctuates anything too far from that, and especially if those come in all at once, Amazon's really good at noticing like suspicious sort of activity. But like we have a product that maintains 4.4. I don't know why. Like I haven't thrown more reviews at that thing for a while, and like I've seen, like if you do the math on it, that thing's probably a 4.1, 4.2. And I don't know why that thing hasn't budged from 4.4 in like 3 years. So I don't necessarily understand the weighting thing either. But once you're sort of solidified somewhere, you seem to have a lot of leeway.
Do you miss all the tactics? Like back in we've talked about a couple of them here, but back in the day, you could do a lot of manipulation, right? And I still think there's a little bit out there, but Amazon's really cracked down on, you can't manipulate reviews, right? Like I can't even get friends and family to do them. If they've ever been on my IP address, on my Wi-Fi at my home, their review's gone. You used to be able to, just leave reviews like you said. You used to be able to upvote and downvote reviews. I would assume there's a lot more hacks that maybe you knew from back in the day than I knew. I wasn't doing a whole lot of them. And so do you miss that era, or are you happy Amazon's actually really trying to crack down and good products are finally going to win?
I mean, it's a little bit of both. Like, I'm sure you have this too. It's like, if I could go back and do then what I know now, like, oh my gosh, I'd destroy it. Like I would build so much faster and so much bigger. But at the same time, I do think the Amazon crackdown is a good thing. I think they have some details to iron out for sure. But I do like the direction that they're moving, where you do have to build you have to have a better product. You do have to have much more traditional sort of marketing in place. And it is like the better product sort of does rise to the top many a time. There are guys out there that are throwing a ton of money at stuff, but like if you're doing good marketing and if you have a good product, you're going to be in a good position as long as you can get some reviews behind it and some traction.
So talk to me about your growth. Like, I'm trying to think of some people who are prominent out there. Like Ryan Daniel Moran has his, I think he even has a book out, 12 Months to 1 Million or something, right? And he basically talks about get one product to 25 sales a day, then scale to 3 products doing 25 sales a day, and you have $1 million business. So, well, I do think it is that simple. I also think it's not that simple. Talk to me about the way you scaled, right? Did you take Amazing Selling Machine, which I'm sure is having you download multiple different tools to find out, basically it's just, who's winning and let's go copy them, which I've never been a real fan of that type of method. I really want to bring value to my customers. So talk about how you scaled to multiple products, and then like how you found those products. Were you following that, steal other people's data method, or were you, listening to your customers, which I think is probably more beneficial?
I think there's a combination of all of those things. When I'm sorry, I'm trying to reach back here and think. So for sure, like our data, our method of collecting data now is far more granular than it used to be. Like, I mean, the original process years and years ago was just like me scrolling through listings and eyeballing, and one, looking for good products, but two, looking for like where the warm sort of market was. Like I didn't, like, even back in that time, I was kind of late to the game and I didn't have the deep enough pockets to go up against the big boys. And so I was always looking for like, the tier 2 sort of markets where like, yeah, there's a lot of sales happening, but I wasn't, you weren't necessarily going to be doing like, 1,000, 2,000 units a day on a single product. So I was like, all right, like where can I potentially compete? And even at that, like when we did have something take hold, the growth almost killed me. I almost didn't have enough cash to sort of keep that thing churning. But it was a combination of like, one, identifying a type of product that we think we can put into the market, two, creating a superior product, and then three, actually making it happen, which is its own sort of ball of wax. And so like identifying the market went from, just me making list after list on Excel to now there's tools to scrape a bunch of data all at once, scraping stuff based on a keyword and then identifying products that are in that market and then identifying keywords that they're ranking for. And sorry, this sounds extremely nerdy, but yeah, it's,
but that's the way it goes, right? Like that's a lot of the methods that are out there. Pull up Jungle Scout, see what's selling,
right.
Find a product that has low reviews, but it's selling a lot. The images aren't great, that you can go in there and make them better. And certainly I follow that method in some of the businesses I've been a part of, but I've also seen that if you bring something to market that doesn't necessarily exist and create your own keywords, it works, right? And so I'm genuinely curious when I talk to people, what helped them scale? Did you just continue to throw products? Because that gets expensive, right? You can only roll your profit in so many times before you, number one, would like to take some money out yourself. And then the business, like you said, you almost run yourself out of business the faster you grow and the more you launch, right? You just need more money and more money and more money.
Yeah, there was sort of like this critical mass tipping point of like, oh, okay, like there's enough money coming in. I can take some money out comfortably and I can support myself and we can continue to sustain growth. And then it was like setting sort of a budget, like what's our launch budget? How much are we going to spend to take a product to market? And, when are we going? We've had, I would guess we have somewhere around like a 70% success rate in getting products sort of profitable, maybe 75. And then we've killed off some just because they're slow sellers and we can't turn the inventory super fast. And because of that, then, it's better to have the cash and put it towards something that we can actually sell at a greater volume. But it was also about creating a superior product. So it was like, okay, well, when we went into those, when we identified a market that we wanted to be in, I have some custom formulation teams that I work with now. And so it's going out there and it's finding like, hey, what would be a great, like, we do want to make a difference. We want to put out a product that is really, really good. Like, are there any clinically proven ingredients with, studies that back them that says, this ingredient, if we put it in there, it's going to be effective for this person that's experiencing this problem. Like, we do want to solve whatever their pain point is. And so it wasn't necessarily like, I hate just ripping off people's formulas. Like that wasn't, that's not a great way to do business.
But this is what I'm talking about, right? Like a lot of those courses, and I'm just going to say those courses. You can put whoever you want in that bucket. They just, they tell you to do that. They go find a product that's winning, go on Alibaba, or for supplements, go on ThomasNet, or just Google it. You'll find all the manufacturers, right? And just rip off someone's formula. It's usually just a private label formula. Slap your label on it, and don't try to like improve anything. Don't try to take care of your customer. Just get it on Amazon and kind of ride the wave. And certainly you're going to make some money. And I appreciate those people who want to go after those cash grabs. But if you want to build a real business, you got to do some of the things that you're talking about here.
Yeah, and like I think that's why we've had the longevity that we have is we actually for several of our products we've had different sort of formulations or revisions on those formulas over the years based on customer feedback. Like if we go through and we're seeing a bunch of like, oh, you're using like using folic acid instead of folate, or like whatever the methylated formulation of that ingredient is, like we're gonna research what the difference is. Like we want to know, like and it turns out that there's a certain percentage of the population that has a genetic mutation. They can't absorb folic acid or can't readily absorb it. It's very difficult for them. And so even though they're the same ingredient, I think they're B9, even though it would be like folic acid and folate are the same thing, just different versions of B9, then folate is the natural version that people with this genetic mutation can absorb better. And then if we take it a step further and we get the methylated version of folate, then it's even better for them. Like, well, let's go with that. And it's like, and then if there's, and it's more expensive. Like it's more expensive to buy the all natural methylated version than it is to do the synthetic version that they made in a lab. But it's more effective and it helps those people. Like, why wouldn't we put the quality ingredient in there to help the people and to,
Right.
To get the raving fan and the repeat customer?
Yeah, I mean, it's harder, right? I would imagine, just on my own experience in my own supplement journey, the private label version from your manufacturer is usually one they're selling with their own label on it, and they can get you out tiny quantities, and it's easy. It's easy to get started. And where you want to come with your contract version with the right ingredients that's backed by actual science, like it's gonna set you back, right? You're gonna have to order a lot of units out of the gates.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it just depends. It depends a little bit on where you are in the journey too, and like how much experience that you have. Like we're confident in ordering a first batch of like 10,000 units because we know we're going to sell 10,000 units. Like we know we're going to do that just getting the amount of reviews and getting it to rank to where we want it to before we reorder the next batch, and then based on sales, maybe that next batch is 15,000 or 20,000. Like we know we're going to use 10,000 units, so why not custom formulate it to what we want it to be?
Well, I love talking about the issues you might have ran into growing to 8 figures, but I think me personally, and probably a lot of people listening, want to hear what problems exist at 8 figures, right? Because a lot of people would say, oh, he's at 8 figures, he must have his feet kicked up, he must be living a great life. And I know that's not the case. Having left an 8-figure business and talking to you, I know that there's a lot going on. There's a whole lot going on, right? And so I've got a few notes here. Number one, you've got private equity looking at buying your business. Like, how did that come about? How do they spot you? How do they approach you? What does that even look like?
That actually came about because through like the financial consultants, they're like, well, what do you think the business is worth? I'm like, I don't know what kind of multiple that I could get for it. And then it was just sort of like, well, what if we reach out to like a private equity firm? And so it was just sort of like an introduction just sort of happened. Like, and then from there I was like, well, let's see how many other private equity firms are out there. And, so you just start asking around and seeing kind of what they're looking for. And they're happy to tell you, like they're like, oh, you have a nice, cute little business going there. That's adorable what you're doing, and pat you on the head. And they're like, if you want to play with the big dogs and you want to get some big money, then here's the kind of thing you have to work towards.
Okay.
And
so what's the multiple they're looking at when you're, quote unquote, just an Amazon business? And then what are some of the tips they're doing to tell you to grow outside of that and get real money?
The multiples start really low depending on the size and age of your Amazon business. But like when you start adding in a few other things on top of it, layering in like age, custom formulas, a couple of trademarks and IPs that are associated with it, a certain amount of fulfillment that's outside of Amazon. If you're strictly Amazon, you're probably going to cap out around a 3.5 X multiple. And then as you add in other channels, even if they aren't doing great, you can get that up to 5 pretty easily. And then if you can tip the scales and you can be like, and you can cut Amazon down below 50%, you can get it up as high as like 8, an 8X multiple for a supplement business.
Wow.
That's what I've seen.
So I've experienced the same thing, just seeing other businesses sold, and then reaching out to some people that I know that are advisors for selling those businesses. Like me right now, I sell the pet supplements. You can see them on video behind me. Right. Mostly Amazon. However, Chewy picked me up in the last year. That ended up scaling to 10 to 20% of the business. And Shopify is still more like, I don't know, 5% or something like that. Right. Scaling quickly, but not anywhere near what Amazon does, right? And so the moment that happened, immediately you shift into like a 5x multiple just by having those other channels and those other opportunities. So you're experiencing the same thing. Is it brick and mortar channels? Is it mostly like Shopify they're trying to get you on? What would they like to see?
They're not even talking about brick and mortar. I think brick and mortar is kind of like where private equity sort of stands to make their great gains here, is like they can just, they can pump you out to all these other locations if you have a good enough customer base and a good enough footprint on the internet. And so that looks like building out Shopify and controlling your own customer and your own ecosystem and your own data and controlling your Instagram channel and maybe having some influencers. It's just having different streams of revenue that are enough to offset Amazon. And I think they might have to bend a little bit eventually on those multiples. It's like, at some point, it's like Amazon accounts for like so many purchases online. Like, how do you can have the best marketing in the world, but man, Amazon, if you're doing well on Amazon, if you've positioned well on Amazon, like the only alternative, I guess, is to cut off your Amazon game. If you don't want to get the most out of that channel, then yeah, you can outdo it with Shopify and the other channels that are out there.
I recently tweeted about this. Look, they take up 50% of all e-commerce purchases, right? Mm-hmm. And then I don't know what you do on Shopify. I think I do pretty well at like 3 to 5% conversion rate. Mm-hmm. My top 3 Amazon listings that I tweeted out the other day, and they're better now. I'm going to pull them up in live time just so I don't sound like an asshole.
Okay.
All right, let's go to reports, business reports. In the last 30 days, my top 3 listings convert at 69.9%, 68.1%, and 51.7%. That's bananas.
Yeah. Like
why would you not be on Amazon?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and we're the same way. Like our top converting listings are mid 60s, I think. It's insane. Why wouldn't you exploit those channels? And the thing is, like all that review activity, ports and kind of the goodwill sort of ports. And so I don't know if you've done it yet, but if you go to Europe, then a lot of that data comes with. And so it's real easy to then, okay, like the volumes aren't as big as sales over there, but man, you can get a huge chunk of that pie super fast just by putting your listing up over there because of the goodwill of Amazon sort of translates over.
So the only reason I haven't jumped is I'm worried. What are the regulations, the GDPR, the ingredients too, right? And so I even reached out to our mutual friend Tom about going to Canada, and he told me, there's some Canadian governmental body that I need to make sure I get approval from before I send my products up there.
Board of Health Canada, and they'll issue you like an NFN number for your stuff. It's a process. It's so long. Like it was so long that when we went for approval in Canada, did I tell you about this already? When we went for approval in Canada, it was. Like I gave the guy all that stuff and he called me back like months later, like, oh, we're ready. And I'm like, who are you? Like, I completely forgot who this guy was and what he was doing. And he was just getting our NFN numbers and getting our stuff approved for Health Canada. And then it was also like, you either had to have a manufacturer in Canada or you had to get your manufacturer in the US approved for Canada. And so then it was like, I ended up paying like a few $1,000s to actually have my manufacturer locally in the US approved for Canada. And so I was like, oh, well, no, I always got a manufacturer there, but that's okay. At least if I want to sell in Canada.
So this is going to just get windier as you start bringing up stuff. But like, what is your relationship with your manufacturer like? Because I'm going to be honest and say I'm currently looking for someone else to make our products just as a oh shit plan. Occasionally they screw up our orders. Occasionally they screw it up in a way in such that Amazon screws it up when they show up, which screws up the whole thing, and I got to pull them all out. And what's your relationship there? Have you been to the place and visited them? What kind of relationship do you have with your manufacturer?
I have a very good relationship with my manufacturer. Like we just talk regularly. I think it was one of those. Like I was one of their first customers. The way it worked was I originally manufactured at another place and they were lying to me. They were just lying to me. And he was my rep at that place, and he's like, here's the deal. He just came out and he like told, like, he's like, let me walk outside. He's like, they're lying to you. He's like, they're lying to you about everything. He's like, I would tell you the truth, but he's like, they're lying to me. So he's like, all I'm telling you is what they're telling me. And he's like, I'm going to leave. He's like, I can't live my life like this. And I was like, all right, cool. Like, thank you for being honest with me for the first time at the company. I was like, if you ever start your own business, which it was what he was talking about doing. I was like, I'll let you quote some stuff. And he's like, great. And so I went to another manufacturer and then circled around to like, hey, why don't you quote this? And I was like, all right, we'll give it a shot. And I was like, all I ask is like, just be honest with me. If you guys are having delays or, if something doesn't test right, or I don't care what it is, just, be honest with me. Like, don't tell me you're going to have it ready in 2 weeks when it's going to take 10. Like that's really important to me. Tell me what the real lead time is and I'll plan for it. Like, we'll work with you on it, whatever it's going to be.
That's the biggest issue for me as well. Like, I do have a couple private label formulas in my mix, and one of them just out of nowhere, they're like, yeah, we're not going to sell this one anymore. We're going to reformulate it. We'll be back in 3 weeks, we promise. It was like 5 months later when they finally came back, and I'm like, what is going on here? And they're like, by the way, we have 600 available, and we won't run this again for another month. If you want all 600, we need your new labels with the new formula by tomorrow. And I'm like, what the fuck? So I had to call my designer and like get it all fixed. And just headaches, man. I don't know. And I had the same experience as you. So that mastermind we were in, I went to dinner at the Pachanga. Is that the casino that's right there in Temecula? With my rep at the time, who said the same thing. He's like, this company kind of sucks. I'm going to be leaving soon. Here's all the dirty details. Here's the 2 people you definitely want to keep talking to and don't talk to the rest. And I really wish he was back there. He was the guy who was always honest with me, always on point, and definitely not having that same experience with a new rep for sure.
Yeah, there's a certain amount of shadiness that goes on in that business, and it's really hard to, I work really hard to make sure all my stuff is third party tested, and like I want to know that the stuff that we're selling people is 100% legit. Like I'm just that kind of guy. Like if I'm gonna put my name on something, gosh darn it, I want it to be good, and like I don't want to unwittingly sell somebody something that isn't what I'm saying it is. So, but that's not how a lot of people in that business operate. And like, I know a big supplement brand that for a while was just, they bought overstock on something that was essentially just rice flour in a capsule. And then they bought a labeling machine, and they were just labeling rice flour capsules as whatever and selling them on Amazon. And that was terrifying.
To be fair, that probably worked on like 75% of people who bought it, and they were like, yeah, I feel like I'm taking a B vitamin.
Probably. Yeah, the placebo effect. Gosh darn it. But yeah, so manufacturing. So that was just like, it's been a long time of building that relationship. And like they've come out to visit me. I have not gone out to visit them, but only because it seems like a field trip, and I haven't been able to justify it as far as getting away from the kids for that period of time to go out and walk through their facility. And what am I going to do when I'm there?
The advice I got was to go find apparently there's a ton of retired FDA inspectors and things like that work as freelancers, and that you could hire them, fly them with you. And so that was my plan. I was going to go there in March. Obviously, nobody went anywhere in March. Right. And so, I was planning on going there. I just wanted to meet them in person. I just wanted to shake their hand in person and be like, look, man, I'm a real person. Right. Like you, no more bullshit, right? Like, just don't lie to me. Like, let's just move forward. I have your best interest in mind. And, sure. Yeah, mine's weird. Like my manufacturer has their own house brand. They sell at 1/4 of the price that I sell. Some of the products are the exact same, and I outsell them like 10-1. And I'm just like, we could work together here. Like I'm not worried about competition. I could come in there and help you scale your house brand, and maybe you could give me better terms on my products. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I just wanted to meet them and shake their hand and really try to build a better relationship.
Yeah, and like that's important. We didn't quite get to that, but yeah, they've come out to my place several times, and I'm trying to think where else we've met. And they paid for me to go to, I think it was Supply Side West out in Las Vegas, and they're like, hey, just walk around here and like point at stuff that you think is interesting, and like we'll go and dig it. And like they're a completely open book with me on everything. They give me any sort of details that I want, and like they sent me like a a Thanksgiving present the one year, which was they bought me a green egg, one of the smoker barbecue big green egg things, and they shipped that out to my place. They bought my kids a swing set one year, like a big like gorilla like wood play set. And so like I have a really, really close relationship. We like text pictures of our kids back and forth and stuff like that. And just like it's all hinging on honesty. And we've talked a couple of times about like if the opportunity ever came up for me to buy in, would I be interested? And I would.
So that was my next question, right? On my big vision board is like go vertical, right? Would I ever go buy this manufacturer, get rid of my own headaches, scale their house brand, sell to all my competitors? Is that something you've really thought might be in your future, or would you just buy part of it?
As far as manufacturing goes, only because I've had the conversation with the private equity firms where I was like, does this matter? Do you want to acquire manufacturing? They're like, not really. Like we have our own manufacturing for supplement brands. That's not a big deal to us to acquire another manufacturing facility. They're like, we care about the customer footprint. So expand the customer footprint. I think it'd be interesting, just like I like it for the sake of solidifying that relationship and doing more business in the future. And also having a stake in just having a little bit of say in like ingredients that we stock and kind of a direction that things go in and stuff like that. And it's just purely like I'm a retail side and they're very much a wholesale manufacturing side, and we just have different sets of information. Right. And so I think I can help them out from that respect. And I've sent them a considerable amount of business. Like I've sent them plenty of customers that come to me and ask me like where I manufacture. And so I'm like, maybe I should get a kickback on some of this, but maybe that's what the swing set is.
Continuing down that PE, swing set affiliate commission. I love it. Continuing down that PE line, like they're saying, move off of Amazon, right?
Right.
Like Shopify, obviously, telling you don't buy your manufacturer, which actually kind of shocks me if I'm honest. What are they telling you besides like getting to Shopify, owning your customer? Is there any other things that they told you that you were like, I hadn't really thought of that, or I did think of this and you told me it's nonsense, that was appealing to a PE to give you a big multiple?
Like the biggest thing is controlling the footprint of being able to get the customers, whether that's different things that speak to that are Instagram groups or Facebook groups or any sort of like meetup or just any sort of like additional customer sort of footprint, and a place for them to readily identify the demographic that they don't necessarily have becomes a very interesting sort of asset. And that's different from like your brand Facebook group. That's like, we've been building out like for a long time, we built out groups related to like whatever our product sort of did or people it would help. We wanted to create a certain group of that footprint of customer. And so that's an additional resource to them is, we've got these pools of 10,000 people or so in Facebook groups that, that we post to regularly and they comment regularly. And so it's like, it's easy for us to put stuff into those channels that, we can then sell, or we can direct them in certain methods. And so it's an additional resource to like our email customer database list, or, if you had Instagram followers, or if you have Instagram ambassadors, those are just, that's a way to increase the reach even further from resources that private equity would currently have.
So I had a course on this a long time ago, actually, like building Facebook groups around your drop shipping store. And I took a different turn on it as well. And I'm curious, are you representing your brand in these groups? So let's say you sold protein powder or something, right? Mm-hmm. Clearly you're going after the meatheads. Are you building like a bodybuilding Facebook group? Mm-hmm. Are you representing your brand in this bodybuilding Facebook group? Or are you simply representing like a guy named Tom who really likes to work out and he's jacked, and that's the guy you are in this group? How are you managing that, I guess?
We've sort of taken like an advisory sort of standpoint. Like there is no specific I guess face or characterization to it. Just like, hey, like we like for our supplements that treat like ailments. And treat, I'm using very loosely in the FDA allowed sense of the term, where none of our supplements is used to treat, diagnose, or cure any diseases. But
you look like you just read that off a bottle.
I've said it so many times. But for when we're building around certain types of people, where a supplement that we have should be somewhat effective for something that they're experiencing, then yeah, we go in there and we create support. We post articles. It's it's a community type of engagement. It's, we post articles, we post recipes, we post links to this and links to that. And then it's like, oh,
but
hey,
who's posting it, right? Is it Troy Remelski who's posting this? Is it some pseudo person you made up? Is it your business runs the page and your business is posting this stuff?
One of the people on my team is an admin. We don't make any sort of official disclosure that we said. Okay, so we do in a couple of the groups. We have like an official, like, hey, like we own this, like the brand owns this, but like it's not salesy. Like it's like, hey, just so you know, we own this, but like we're going to continuously pump information into that group, and we're going to give them resources and genuinely try and help. And it is about, it is about just treating your customer right. And then every now and then it's like, hey, we're having a sale, or like, hey, subscriptions are going to be, 20% off for the next few weeks. Like, but it's not overly aggressive in any stretch of the imagination.
So like, and I'm pulling it out. I wonder if I have any, and of course I don't. I don't have any of them saved anymore. I thought I had them in my last pass. We would create like terrible names. Like I want to say one was Bill Smith, and he was like, he was just really into this niche that we were in. And so we created a Facebook group around it. And I think we used it as an example in that course I had. And we grew it to like 80,000 people. And we never went in there and we were like, buy from our company kind of thing. We did put like in the header image sponsored by this company. And then we would mention if we would just go in there and, what do you people think on product A versus product B versus product C? We would give our opinion. We would share some articles. The 80,000 people would comment on why they like something or don't like something. Right. And then we would just shoot a link in the comments of like, well, you can get it here. And that was about it. Right. And that's how we did it. So I'm genuinely curious, number one, how you do it. And then, I like the idea that PE is interested in something that, I kind of just threw some shit at the wall and it stuck for us, and I made it a course on it, if I'm honest with you.
Right. Yeah. No, we've gone in and asked a couple of questions. We've done it on when we have enough traction early enough. We've done it with imagery. Like if we're toying with what we're going to put on the label, then it's a great way to sort of pull what we think is going to work best and what's going to speak to that audience. And we've done it like with imagery and with colors, and we use it kind of for our own purposes as like a testing ground of like what gets the most responses. People in this group, like, do they respond to, are they more receptive to things with brain fog, or are they more worried about insomnia, or are they worried about weight gain, or whatever it is? Like we kind of like, we make a list of whatever the hot button issues are, and then it's interesting to post up those articles and see which ones get the most link clicks and the most engagement. And then it's things that we know that we can use as sort of a marketing tool, a feather in our cap later on, and it does get us some sales along the way.
Look, I think it works. Our friend Ashley, she sells a boatload of dog shoes online. I think she owns like a golden retriever Facebook page that does okay for her. And you just got my head turning, right? Imagine if you had a supplement for tennis elbow, right? You could just have an I love tennis page, and you're going to get those people. I don't want to say control, because at some point you're going to have to pay for that Facebook group, I have a feeling. But you do have access to them, right? You can get their email address, so you can do a lot of things with that. So that's kind of cool. Anything else off the wall? And I love your little cats coming in the picture there. I love it. Yeah.
I shut the doors and he must have busted in here somehow.
I'm surprised mine's not behind me either. Anything else that surprised you that PE brought up that you weren't doing, or that you were like, wow, that's a good idea?
So there was commentary towards retail. And I want to say, this was a while ago, I'm reaching back like a year. They were like, they're like, if we do this, you might not have to set up retail, but you might have to set up sort of the full scale EDI, I think it's EDI system, to be able to get the kind of multiple that you're looking for. And I was like, what? Like, that's not my wheelhouse at all. Like, I don't even know exactly what that entails. And
surprisingly more simple than you'd think, right? So I had to get an EDI connection for Chewy, and it's simply a system by which they can send you a standard order to, I use SPS Commerce. They're out of Minneapolis. They send it to there. It comes to me. I reply back with the correct fields they want answered. I'm sorry, your cat's adorable on this video. I wish we were sharing video. I reply with the fields they want answered and send it back. And it's more like a process. So I pay $100 a month for Chewy and I to communicate this way.
Okay. Well, that makes it Sound like I should have accepted that deal then.
Yeah, it sounds like it's pretty common. I remember the first time I got an order, I was freaking out. I was like, what do I need to do? I have 24 hours to accept this order.
Right.
And I sat down with our friends from Evo Hemp who were in the room, and they were like, yeah, this is easy. Just click this one button, check this box. And I was like, oh, this is like way more simple than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, all right, maybe, but that was the only thing that sort of like stood out was you're not already like you need to be set up to handle retail, and you're not currently.
Yeah. No, it's definitely way more simple than you think. So I took a couple notes based. We talked yesterday, for those listening, we talked what was supposed to be a 5-minute sound check turned into 30 minutes of us bantering back and forth. But it got me some notes, right? And so looks like they brought up M&A to you, so mergers and acquisition, right? So this is something recently I've been getting more and more into. I reached out to my number one competitor on my pets brand and attempted to buy her business. It didn't work out. I'm going to reapproach her in the near future as I like the opportunity there. But like, did they give you suggestions as far as like mergers or acquisitions you could make that would, grow your footprint, grow the multiple that eventually they want to give you for your business?
Yeah, our growth on Amazon has continued, and so that's sort of been the pain point. Is like our growth off Amazon has continued as well, but Amazon's just a beast, and so it's kind of hard to outpace it. And so it was like, well, like if I have a sort of a timeline of when I want to formulate an exit from this company, like how am I going to do it? And they were like, well, you could just go out and acquire other people with a similar customer demographic or other brands that are just their main source of revenue is not on Amazon. And I was like, okay. And so that would be a way to sort of like edge the needle closer to the other direction. I was like, okay, so that's been a real sort of interesting thing that I've been embarking on over the past couple of weeks and getting my ducks in a row. And I'm really going to start attacking it aggressively in the next 2 weeks here.
So did they talk to you about content sites at all as far as being part of that? So part of my grand vision is to really just go by ilovecats.com and answer every how does a cat blank, why does a cat blank, right? And just generate all that traffic and then, mention my supplement with my cat's face on it here. And I feel like that has to bring value to the table. Is that something they ever mentioned to you as far as, building out content sites to drive your own traffic?
Yeah, it was just kind of like a brainstorming sort of suggestion was along with the whole Facebook thing as that brought value to the table. Like authority sites also bring value to the table. And whether they're affiliates to your brand or just straight up promoting your brand or just having an additional reach to the customer within that demographic, that brings value to the table. And certainly if you monetize it, then it adds to the EBITDA and adds to the multiple. Otherwise, you're just pitching it as an additional asset, but not a revenue generating asset.
So I've seen a few. I've sold a business on Empire Flippers before, so I have the ability to deposit without actually putting money down and look at a few businesses. So I've seen quite a few come across that. In all reality, they got slapped by Amazon's recent FU to the affiliates, but they look good. They have a lot of traffic, right? It'd be very simple to throw up another article about me. I think what held me back was, God, I hate WordPress. Like I really, really hate WordPress. I love Shopify. I've become quite a ninja there, if I'm honest. To myself, I think I'm pretty good. But I hate WordPress. I don't even like dealing with it. Actually, I was gifted one of these sites that used to do really, really well. It still does a few $100s a month. I don't even want to go fix it. I can see what's wrong with it, and I can't stand it because it's WordPress. So like, does any of those limitations hold you back? Do you have someone on your team that you can just kind of be like, hey, this is what I want done? I think you have quite a team going behind you at this point.
I got a decent team, and I have interviews. I've got headhunters now that are out like trying to track down some people, which that's been really interesting rather than because I sort of bootstrapped my way up, which was, just put out an ad for a general VA and then we'll get them some courses, kind of teach them like how to do whatever we needed them to do. And now we're in a position, which is really good, which is, we can just go out and like, hey, I need a guy who already has these skills. Can we go find him and, get him on the team? And we're working on that now. And that's really exciting. I'm actually excited for the interviews I have lined up this week. But to go back to your point about, sorry, key me in. What was the actual question you asked me one more time there?
Now you got me blanking.
Okay. So going back to WordPress though, like,
yeah, like, do you have someone on your team that could manage that? I think was the question. Or like, do you have someone who, could you go buy an authority site and immediately have someone on your team, be able to continue to grow it? Is that something you'd want to build from scratch and that's a whole new set of hiring practices, right?
Yeah,
Find a
I
writer
don't want to build that stuff from scratch right now. I think it'll just take too long for what I want it to be. And so that's actually part of the mergers and acquisition plan, is to go out and acquire some kind of authority sites that are out there. And there's somebody keyed me into that. There's a website, authorityhacker.com, and they have a Facebook group where they're actively building authority sites, I think with the intention of selling them one day or to generate passive income. And so one of the things that I'm yet to do is to reach out to the owners of that group and be like, hey, I'm interested in buying some sites. Like, can I take a peek at what you guys are doing? But I haven't. What is it? Empire Flippers? Is that where you sold a site?
Yeah.
Yeah. I just reached out to them a few weeks ago, and they're like, hey, do you want to put $10,000 down or something? That's Empire Flippers, right?
Sure.
They're like, do you want to put $10,000 down just to see the details of this business? And I'm like, no, that's like silly.
Yeah. It's a weird system over there because it's a completely refundable deposit.
Right.
So you put a deposit down, which I think is like 5%, and it caps at like 10K based on the site. Then you get all the details. You get added to analytics. There's no like, you're not signing any. I don't know. It's weird. Their system is a little weird.
I just don't want to like give people $10,000 like to sit and look at stuff. That's like, but they did say, they were like, well, you can give us bank statements and up to like, and whatever the value is of the bank statement, like how much cash you're holding, that's the value of the business you can look at. I'm like, well, I got to give you like a bunch of different bank statements. And they didn't want to take certain asset types and stuff like that. I'm like, you guys suck. Like, sorry, Empire Flippers. I will probably I'll probably bend over and move some stuff into cash just so I can take a peek at what you guys have. Because apparently they have some pretty good stuff available there. Yeah. And apparently they've got a pretty good system of actually selling stuff. I just can't look at it.
It's just a different type of listings that are over there, right? And so I recently had my friend John on. We actually both sold through them, and we had a few complaints as we were talking about our discussion through selling through them. But you can't. They sell different things, right? So they're very much, they started as an AdSense Flippers site. I think they were AdSenseFlippers.com or something like that. And so they do sell a lot more content sites than where if you went to like Quiet Light Brokerage, you're going to find a lot more physical products. But yeah, I mean, if I can make any intros over there, certainly I'd be happy to. On either side, definitely know, a couple people at Quiet Light too that I think are pretty awesome. So I'd be happy to make some introductions if you don't know anybody.
Yeah, I know a few people over at Quiet Light. They're good people. I really like. I've had a few conversations with Joe and I think Brad over there. Yeah, they're like. I'm in Ezra Firestone's Blue. If we want to talk masterminds, I'm in Ezra Firestone's Blue Ribbon Mastermind, and Quiet Light is. They're sponsors of the Blue Ribbon events, and so yeah, they're always around. And they're just good guys. Like if I go to sell a business, they're definitely gonna get a crack at selling it for me.
Look, that's a great transition into one of my last notes. Is so many masterminds. I remember sitting with you in a mastermind as you're telling me about Ezra's mastermind, and then I'm like, oh, that's cool. You're in that, and you're like, well, I can't talk about one, but I'm in another one. And I feel like you even mentioned one further than that. So talk to me about masterminds in general, and I'm sure I can deep dive into a million questions of like, how did you even get started in the mastermind like journey, if you will?
I think it was like very early on, just because I didn't know many other sellers. I got sucked into like a Skype group that was masterminding, where it was like sort of a mastermind, sort of just an accountability group. And from then they start talking about like other groups that they're in. And then there's, especially with early on Amazon, when tactics and things were changing like all the time. And, people were constantly finding ways to punch a hole in the system and game the system, even for a limited period of time. It was like, if you like, not only for doing the best with your products, but also for knowing what your competitors were doing, it was very helpful to sort of like have your fingers into a number of different pies, just so you heard what was going on and what was possible, or tactics to watch out for and have a defense in place for. And you roll that into, man, like internet marketing can be a kind of a lonely world. Like I've been sitting in a room by myself for like 7 or 8 years now. Like it's a long time. And I mean, it provides a lot of freedom, and it's actually the lifestyle that I prefer. But to have like conversations with people in your business, you don't do it. At least I don't do it on a super often basis. Maybe I need a podcast, but yeah. So it was a combination of like knowing all the tactics and stuff that were going on throughout all the different, throughout all the different groups, specifically for Amazon. And then Ezra has this killer mastermind group that's for like e-commerce and Shopify build. And so that was sort of a different aspect. And you just, before you know it, you're paying a ton of money for all these different masterminds. Yeah. And
so was your first one free? That's my big question, right? So when I first started,
how they get you. The first one's free.
When I first started, it was just some people within the course I was in, right? So I took a drop shipping course, and then like 3 other people were like, "Hey, let's get together," and we kind of called that a mastermind. And it might be, right? You're bouncing ideas off each other, but what really like changed everything for me was when I started paying for access to things. So e-commerce fuel is a forum I'm part of. It's relatively cheap, if I'm honest with you, but they only allow right now, I think, 7-figure plus store owners in there. And that just changes the conversation you're having, right? Putting yourself around those people, that changed it for me. Then I went into the mastermind where we met, which was $25,000 for a year, which seemed like just an outrageous amount of money to pay somebody. But I've built amazing relationships from there. I've learned a ton of stuff about marketing, and it's really, shot me up to a whole nother level. And so were you in any free ones? And then, can you talk to me about like the pain of paying it first off, right? And now you pay a bunch of them, right? Obviously that speaks to how the value that they're bringing you.
Yeah. I mean, I have whittled it down probably since we talked, just like I was paying for all these groups. And then when you started to go through, and I was like, okay, so which ones am I actually getting value out of? And not only that, but it's like the people who are then at the level that I'm at, not that I'm at a great level, but just more, I've just been around a long enough time sort of in this world, and through just year over year growth, you end up at a certain point. And now that we're there, like there's some stuff that I'm not interested in anymore. Like a bunch of like the little tactics are less interesting to me than, building a good business, doing good marketing, and like employees and standard operating procedures and like all this other stuff, all these other headaches. And so it just depends on what that mastermind group is, who the people are, like what level they're at, what sort of their objectives are. And so like there were a couple of like the lower level ones that I decided to sort of weed out. And, I kept with a few of the groups that are just guys that are at a higher level and building bigger businesses.
Oh, tell me about the secret one. What can you tell me about this? I just remember you telling me like I can't really talk about it, and you gave me a couple sentences.
You don't talk about Fight Club.
This is the super secret one I can't tell you about.
Let's see. What can I tell you about that one? I am still involved in that one.
I think it's cool that you had to sign an NDA and you don't talk about. I think that's actually pretty awesome. And I think there's a lot of people that worry about divulging all their information, but then like real breakthroughs happen when you finally actually do talk about your business and the products you sell and the people you're trying to serve. And then at some point you kind of shudder back in and don't want to talk about it anymore. And so what's so secret in this one, Troy? Tell me. I can see the little smirk on your face. You're like, I don't want to tell you.
I don't know. I think it was just sort of.
What can you tell me?
What can I tell you? Man, that group is really, really focused on what makes Jeff Bezos a lot of money. and we are focused on giving Jeff Bezos everything he needs to send some of that money back our direction.
There you go. I like that. I like the way I like that. Look, I want to talk a little bit about Ezra. I didn't know the guy very, very well. At E-commerce Fuel Live, I sat with him and Andrew Udarian and his little brother too during the E-commerce Fuel poker tournament. And I got to talk to Ezra a little bit. I took his little brother out on the first hand, which is hilarious. And then we find like Ezra's he used to play underground poker games in New York. I really want to interview the guy. Maybe I should tell him.
You should.
I should hit him up and say Troy says we should interview each other. And anyway, it turns out the guy's really, really smart. He's really, really caring. I got a bad I'm just going to tell you my experience, right? So I went to Digital Marketers Conference in San Diego the first time I ever I'd heard of Ezra or whatever. He's kind of got this like hippie vibe, which I think is hilarious. And I go in and I watch him present, and there's 4 girls directly behind me and my friend Brian Angel. And literally everything he said, like you got to make jokes throughout your presentation. Everything he said, the girls behind us would go, "Aww." And so imagine an hour of a guy you don't know. He's got a big name, he's got his own vibe to him, and everyone behind us is just the whole time. So I immediately was like, I don't know if I'm gonna like this guy, right? But when I played poker with him that day, he told me his nickname in the underground was Johnny. How you
Johnny,
doing?
how you doing?
And
Yeah.
he told old stories, and I was just like, wow, this is like a really genuine, amazing guy, right? And he kind of swings in a lot of same circles. I think he said some people I know from the e-commerce fuel world and just e-commerce in general like presented his mastermind. What can you tell me about like his mastermind and what value that's brought to you? Obviously I've taken some of his courses, which I think come with his mastermind, which are incredible. So I don't know,
Right.
feel free to talk up Ezra Firestone here.
A little plug for Ezra. Ezra's a good dude. He's a really good dude. He, like, I don't know what it is, but yeah, like for me, like hippies kind of, I guess at a glance sort of rubbed me the wrong way. So my first introduction to Ezra, I was like, I don't know about this dude. But he turns out to be like a really genuine, really caring guy, really smart. And he's focused. He attracts a good quality of person to his mastermind. And I think the best relationships that I have with people have come out of the Blue Ribbon Mastermind. And they continue to present great information. They continue to make great courses. And in the group, Ezra is extremely open about his business and the numbers that they're doing and the tests they're running and how they're doing and how much money they spent on stuff. Like it's a complete behind the curtain look at what he's doing with his business and how he's managed to grow it over the years. And not only his successes, but you've seen some of the, his stumbling points along the way. And and if you go back, like I have some older videos of him that I've watched pretty recently. And I'm like, he has grown so much as an individual and so much as a trainer. And he's just genuinely good dude. And especially when we usually have 2 events a year with that group. And when COVID hit, very quickly they were like, you know what, like we're going to reduce our membership during this time to 50% what it was. And so right away they were like, people are hurting out there and we're gonna help alleviate some of that. And that's in part due to the fact that they're going to have to cancel the second live event for the year, which was part of our dues, and they were going to stream it live instead. But it was instead of going to, a destination, having all the bells and whistles that supposedly your dues is thrown in for along the way, they gave us half off our membership, which nobody asked for. So that was just like an incredible sort of like voluntary gesture on their part, I thought. And yeah, Ezra's a good dude.
Yeah, I played, he's part of a poker group that we play on Wednesday nights. He comes every once in a while, and he right after.
Where's my invite? I haven't gotten an invite to this poker group.
I'm happy to put you into the text string. You might get annoyed by the text, let me tell you. But he showed up, and I remember right when everything started shutting down, and it was kind of in question of like, how long is this going to last? Should I cancel things? He was very open on the call of like, here's what I got invested into my next event, and I don't know what to do. And I was just like, man, I don't envy that position whatsoever. But you're right, man. He's super genuine. I also think him, you, and I are also crazy cat people, and so that probably brings us a little bit closer together as well. But man, I miss that, dude. I miss the masterminds where it was the people for me. I really, really miss that. I don't know how that's going to be replicated during this whole COVID thing, and it's not going away anytime soon. Like a magic vaccine's not going to come and we're all going to get it the same day and we can go back to normal. It's not going away. And I miss that a lot. Do you have any ideas of how, like, in some of the masterminds you're in, have the virtual calls somehow replaced that for you, or do you have any ideas? Because I do miss that in-person interaction, really having the relationships. It's a blessing I got this podcast started at the same time, so I can actually spend some quality time with people. But what have you seen?
Yeah, like the Zoom calls have tried to replace it, and maybe they did for the first like couple of weeks or something like that. And then I was just like, oh, like everything's a Zoom call. And I guess that was good because I got really used to doing Zoom calls, which I probably wasn't before. But at the same time, it's like I miss that interaction with people, because now it's just day in, day out, like same place, same location, like same sort of grind. And there's a huge amount of value to the people that you meet and the conversations that you have in those groups. Just like anytime you get an outsider's perspective on something, you get, well, at least me, I get so used to having like tunnel vision on everything. And like, I got to do this. And it just takes like one little sentence from somebody like, well, did you think about this? Or have you done this? And you're like, No, I didn't, but that's awesome. Like, I'm going to go do that. And so there's a huge value to the people and building those relationships and those interactions because for that factor. And also just, man, just to get out of like the space that you're currently in. And like, even though there's a lot of like meeting time and education time in those events, man, just being in a different location and just having a different routine and like, going and eating some good food and stuff like that. Like, that's sort of a break that I desperately need and I miss. But at the same time, I was kind of in this track where I was going to too many events, and so I needed the break anyway. Now I'm ready to get back out there and go do something.
But Zoom can't replace that, right? You can't replace the side conversations or the downtime on like a little bathroom break where you're having a talk outside, or the dinner you might go have with a small group of people, or sitting in a hot tub late at night, everybody's drinking beers, and that's when, the real tactics start coming out. Right. You can't replace all that stuff on a Zoom call.
Yeah, you definitely can. And that's those have been the key elements to sort of success along the way, is the relationships, is having the people to ask questions to when you're not in that situation anymore. So building those relationships is so incredibly valuable. Like, I don't know what I would have done without that.
Well, where are you going from here, buddy? Obviously we haven't talked in a few months since I got to see you in person, and I definitely missed that. But where are you going from here, right? Obviously PE's looking at you. You're looking to expand M&A. You just moved, across the country, kind of up to Washington, and so that's a big move for you. But where are you going from here? You've had quite a journey in the last decade. What does the next decade hold for you?
The next decade is going to get me out of the operator seat. This is something we touched on a little bit yesterday. It was just, mergers and acquisitions as a method for two tracks. One, for building out different aspects of my health products business, for eventually exiting that one. And on the other side, it's like I've done a lot of modeling for Amazon related businesses and how to rapidly grow and scale them. And so I wanted to be able to pick up and just start acquiring numerous smaller brands. There's a couple of companies that have done it out there. I think I'm going to get it wrong, but I think it's Thrax or Thras.io is one of them, where they've just rapidly acquired and been able to build their revenue. And so a lot of work on my end has gone into like, well, what key employees do we need? What standard operating procedures do we need in place? And I'm just excited as sort of my adventure as an entrepreneur has reached this point where I'm like, hey, let's put everything I've learned kind of to the test. Like, let's apply the theory and let me apply strategy, and let's move some chess pieces and let's dump a few businesses in here and see if we can actually, let's put our money where our mouth is, and let's see if we can actually do this. And I think it'll be a lot of fun. I think it'll be exciting, and I think it'll be intense. And so M&A in two directions. One, acquiring FBA businesses that are, I don't know, a year or two old, that are showing some profitability, but people don't know kind of what to do next to scale them. And so people that got started and then are like, okay, yeah, I think I'm at capacity and looking for, to move on to the next thing. And then on the other side, building out different aspects of the health supplements brand.
So are you looking for people to reach out to you if anybody's listening to this that has a small FBA brand they want to dump on you?
Oh, yeah. I should have sent up like troy.remelski@gmail.com. Send me an email. Nice. Or hit me up on Facebook.
Well, if anybody does want to reach out to you, is there a good place, Troy?
Yeah, Facebook is definitely an easy way to find me. I'm in all the groups, and Troy Remelski. I think there's only one of me. I'm pretty easy to find. Nice. And I'm like the social media troll that's always out there making sarcastic comments on people's posts.
You're worth a friend request just to see your jokes every day, I think.
Thanks.
Well, look, I appreciate having you on. We should definitely stay in touch, man. I miss talking to you, and so thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode. Troy is an awesome human being, so I'm really grateful he was able to come on the show. If you guys are loving this show, I would really, really appreciate it if you could just take 15 to 30 seconds, go to Apple Podcasts and leave a review. Those reviews truly help us find better guests for the show and help us reach more people. So I would very, very much appreciate it if you've been listening to all these episodes, and I know hundreds of you have. Take 2 seconds and go to iTunes and leave a review. I would appreciate it very, very much. I'll put a link to Troy's Facebook in the show notes, and I will see all of you next Wednesday.